I put a significant amount of thought into the games that I choose to talk about. Finding the particular kind of game that I think the whole world should know about is what my decision to play, write, and edit entirely hinges on. Everything that I have and still want to find the time to discuss is in some way my continuing attempt to solve a wholly captivating puzzle. Namely, what game might the most possible people maybe connect to? What game will make them feel seen? The 2023 game, Humanity, isn't the final, but is maybe my best answer to that question. After enough time with this puzzle, this is a game that I have to make that declarative statement about. I recognize Humanity as its boldly titled name suggests, a game for everyone. Puzzle games have always been a part of the story. They are foundational, and not just because the medium was mostly built off the back of them. I consider my time with the medium, and their presence is so recognizable. Sitting for what felt like hours with my mum at a computer, playing I Spy Spooky Mansion games was transformative for a younger me. I've put them therefore on something of a pedestal. They are wholly primal. I always value their worth. Every puzzle that I'm yet to get to deserves that honest stretch of my time. But I am still notoriously difficult to be convinced to commit. The best of them put me into such a consuming state of mind that I'm often too hesitant to let in what I wrongly presume won't replicate that effect. Humanity disregarded that doubt though. It didn't wait for me to get over whether I might click with the experience. The game sat itself alongside the best puzzles that I've ever encountered, and did it all with just vibes alone. So what actually is Humanity? Well yeah, it's complicated. A collaboration between THA and Enhance, it's the best entry of their beautiful Imperial phase of work. A puzzle game that grew from the curiosity to see how many people could be pictured on screen at once, and if they could be guided onto something greater. You control this light that takes the shape of a Shiba Inu, and as this light, you must guide infinite masses of humans to a specified endpoint. A profoundly smart choice, given that I too would follow these dogs without question, the lovely little fluffy wonders. The comparisons you can make are pretty clear. Think about the Clank levels from Rift Apart, Captain Toad, or even a classic like Choo Choo Rocket. The DNA of all of them is somewhat in here, but unlike the relatively simple setup of those predecessors, as this dog, you are at the head of an infinite mass. You direct an effectively unstoppable horde across this Escher-inspired architecture at the request of what you'll call higher beings. You teach humanity to march, turn, jump, swim, pause, and blast. But you don't really just lead them to an explosion of sparks and confetti. The goal you bring them to is salvation. Another chance. You boot up the game, and through this dog, you will save them. That process might bring to mind experiences like Journey or Res, the kind of art that's equally about something, but also nothing at the same time. Canvases that are filled with only rough edges. The actual center, the point, is the specific chaos that you make leading the people. You build a very specific madness that has got your signature on it. Now, not to look completely to the past, but Enhance and THA are basically offering what feels like a lost PS1 game, or even a Japan studio classic. It was born from a curious idea, the collaboration between these creatives not being reactionary business, but the seizing of an opportunity to do something interesting with what the two teams could offer each other. Whilst I do believe the vision of an uncontrollable wave of people, the literal guts of the game, could have existed in some technical state on even some of the oldest consoles, I'm so happy it exists now. At this scale and running this flawlessly, each of those individually rendered little folks feels part of a near sacred achievement. A blessing of sorts. Genuine proof that there's still people left who just get that this is the kind of visual splendor we should be focused on. I mean, just look at the images that you will find a way to create. Progress through that puzzle, create an interesting enough line of motion, and hypnotic imagery will follow. Moments will occur where you understand what spurred the creation of what you're playing intimately. You see the kind of wonder that you can't help but want to replicate. When playing games like Abzu or Dead Rising, despite the flow of the pacing, I can often feel compelled to just let the beat breathe. The sheer volume of elements on screen at once has to be taken in. With enough time and the right combination of ideas, you can create the same kind of unrelenting visual chaos on screen that you find in Tabs or even Katamari. The kind that anyone even remotely passing by the screen would just have to pause and take notice of. There's even a kind of sadistic bliss to some of the imperfect solves, the mistakes and the miscalculations. My body count across all of the games that I've played probably means nothing in comparison to the mass amounts of people that I may have made walk off the edge of nothing and plummet into oblivion just because I came up with an incorrect solution. You can make an eternal waterfall of death by falling. It's very easy after doing it for long enough to become incredibly aware of how many lives you might accidentally, but still definitely will take. You just have to try and not hyperfixate on the fact that the death toll could definitely be in the hundreds of thousands. With the possibility to stumble onto results like this even after very little work, I don't see a future where this game doesn't become influential in some way. When so much of this generation has been artistically homogenized, seeing something so visually focused like this doesn't just feel refreshing, it completely takes the wind out of the sails of everything else. I would give up the likes of ray tracing, AI upscaling, or anything like it in a heartbeat, if specifically a wealth of interesting possibilities coming from original concepts and ideas was what would replace it. The work really becomes about using the visual to create what the heart and mind are arrested by, rather than just what can shine before your eyes. Considering their prior work too, they simply had to focus on making us want to see the fullest potential of this vision. Rewarding stimuli had to be masterfully crafted, when for once, they weren't purposefully leading with puzzle work as their main selling point. Everything else that these guys have put their hands on in this industry have been these glorious expressions of ultimately instinctive engagement and puzzle work. The presentation of the puzzle innately communicates what you need to do, which you then compute almost immediately. Humanity, though, doesn't feel like something that you convince yourself you've just always known how to do. Therefore, instead of offering an endlessly replayable loop, they performed a very calculated walk across a tightrope. They presented a progressive series of challenges that felt like they rendered the mechanics as useless, all until you figured out what was staring you in the face as soon as you found the just right solution. Just like with the best constructed Mario Maker levels, everything here isn't just some stupid dash through madness, but a tested jaunt through highly considered level design. There's very apparent dedication to crafting spaces that keep the player's quality of life and investment at the center of the experience. It lets you relish in a state of play where you have the freedom to tinker until you've satisfied all potential creations. This isn't a puzzle that you just react to and barely have any time to think about. This is a space for your brain to thrive and play in. In that space, it won't be a loop of just lead, lead, lead. Abilities can be swapped out or even forced at random. Sometimes you only have a select few commands. Sometimes you only get one shot to lay out a preemptive journey. Every previously learned lesson, though, has hopefully prepared you enough. Because it's an absolute must for this genre, the developing mechanics cleverly expand in tandem with what you already know. They become a permanent part of your preceding toolbox, or they get wheeled out before the point goes on for too long. Extra notes aren't being added onto an equation or a board somewhere that you feel disconnected from. This is hands-on. Every new addition to that status quo is a fascinating new perspective from which to attack that Rubik's Cube or jigsaw puzzle. They invite us to embrace the time to experiment, rather than just simply compete with or bend to the motion of the puzzle. After long enough, every idea will be informed by experience, data obtained from every crazy thing that you do to that river of people that will lead straight onto completion. Enhance and THA transport you to a place where eventually, a noticeable shift has taken place in your brain. Eventually, after the effective communication of the mechanics, you no longer doubt how to proceed. With each new stage, there's a unique version of the solution already developing in your head. To borrow a line from a rather unstable AI,
now you're thinking with portals.
My problem though is that, to be honest, I didn't really know how to stop. This wasn't quite the Tetris effect. I wasn't seeing glowing dogs and numbers of people in my sleep, but when I was playing, I was just as hooked on honing and fine-tuning my execution. There was always one more jump, one more angle, and then another one too. A further adaptation to the path until I have everything. It felt like efficiency had no end goal after a certain point. It could always be better. The way I personally achieve success would only ever be chasing the most effective and impressive experiments. If each stage was a diamond and the controller was a chisel, I'd never be convinced I'd truly dealt with every rough edge. Now there are these incredible tools to circumvent frustration that are available throughout the whole game, such as being able to reset the paths but retain certain commands, or you can even study these puzzle-solving video demonstrations that you should try and recreate or adapt. I, however, strangely denied myself those tools. I limited myself to just cold, hard starts from scratch. If I encountered a genuine roadblock or just an off-key note, then something felt right about just flipping the board entirely, erasing all data, a choice that I knew I would later relish, putting back together unaided what I took apart. I played with the knowledge that I would do better if I didn't have anyone influencing me, least of all myself. I tapped into the same thing that I became obsessed with in the likes of Portal or The Last Clockwinder, the chance to see the final expression of my problem-solving abilities. All puzzles are basically Rube Goldberg machines. These chain reactions that are carefully organized, heavily revised methods of facilitating motion. When perfect, they eventually reach a point of optimization, being so mastered by the thought that you brought to the table that your place in the mechanism slowly shrinks. The final expression is that euphoric moment where you now need only drop the marble, stand back, and leave the rest to just what you have devised. Everything happening at once is because of you. You've taken control of the puzzle. It's no longer waiting for you to find a way to finish. The challenge has become obedient to when you decide that it starts. You wait to perfect the notes, and then you hand it to the conductor. You nod when it's time, and you receive, well, symphony. Specifically now, symphony that you are separate from, but still deeply responsible for, entrenched in. You are both observer and tinkerer, forevermore. There's a singular value to puzzle games that I feel is more overtly felt in this genre than it might be in most other places. To finish one, no matter the context, is to perhaps know some good at the end of it. An acute awareness of what only you may have managed to achieve due to the sum total of your abilities. Imparted recognition of something bigger that at the end, you are a part of. In discovering that, I found that my way of playing was ironically making me truly miss the point. So obsessed with crafting my own singular procession of excellence, I lost sight of what carrying all those little people actually said. Look at what you helped them achieve together. You were never alone. The truth is that it doesn't really have to be people that you lead. They could have chosen to make it something like the Pikmin. It could have been a dozen frogs or a dozen dogs. But to have made it be human beings is a worthwhile choice. Whilst most of the games that they make might be about falling luminous blocks or iridescent dogs, Enhanced still refuses to compromise on who these games are meant for, who ultimately they are connecting. You can completely ignore that side of it. You can change the river of people to take on goofy appearances and march straight past any of the different musings and thoughts that you encounter. But if you can find the room to separate yourself from just the logic of the puzzles, then there are things waiting for you to see. Because the authorial intent is so open to interpretation, because the building blocks are so abstract, we are operating in the realm of raw feeling. These are my most desperate and frank attempts to try and conceptualize something that feels like it's begging to start conversations. Stuck in these liminal nothing places, being run by these godlike beings who take the form of different coloured orbs, the ones being judged for salvation isn't really clear. Is it the people? Or is it whatever the dog represents? The point of leading the people to salvation isn't defined, but I think the vibes are. It doesn't feel like you'll be tricked. You just progress with the hope that you're going to be doing some good because of all this. The disembodied voices, the orbs controlling this whole setup, the people behind the curtain, they aren't evil or uncaring. They simply have thoughts and comments about us. That after dozens of these puzzles, a casual observer of us, humanity, would be compelled to make. They do not do evil. They make the kind of observations and give the kind of tests to impart soul, culture, experience. If not means to no salvation, then consolation if we never do. You aren't rebuilding humanity through just the chosen few that you could manage to lead to salvation. You lead a collective, each deserving of it. Each of them working to hope see everybody make it there. And if not, at least witness soul, experience, civilization, wisdom, the things we were blessed to be able to know before the end. We rebuild and grow through unification. I think that we've kind of become incapable of having a society where, after enough time and people, we will be able to guarantee that rights will not be infringed upon. Misinformation has already infiltrated our daily lives, and war seems very ready to follow. Human nature has been distorted to result in pain, not the goodness it should naturally create, that arguably to some we were made to do. Can you make individual goodness collective? That's the question that these orbs and the game is constantly asking. Might sheer proximity be enough to do it? It's very easy to linger in the damnation of the bleakness of the situation. But humanity hasn't been lost yet. We haven't failed to be saved. The puzzles we play through have had to be constructed to offer the right space, to offer that chance at understanding. Humans have to kind of degrade and break or plummet into oblivion, exist under the sheer weight of time until hopefully, simple togetherness will help us learn about ourselves. Humanity hasn't been brought here to be tested or judged right before we're about to be saved. We've been dropped into this right when some perspective might do us the most good. Supposedly, if you put 1,000 monkeys in a room with some typewriters, they'll eventually write Shakespeare. Well, the same could be true of us. Put enough of us in a room together, and we might just live up to the vision of who we should be. These beings, the ones running the show, they understand that it really will be only one person, just one that's needed to help us realize. Every author involved almost hints that business just cannot continue as usual. The time to become humanity, so to speak, has come. There might be no impending annihilation. Perhaps this is an incidental or spur-of-the-moment idea, an impatient rush to action to create great change. The ones who told the dog to save us are asking, how long do we have to wait? Or to be honest, why wait? Why wait to help these people get to a place where they will be their best selves? They've recognized that it's just simply time to try something different. They are of the belief and want us to know in the time that we have left that each of us are beautiful things. This isn't salvation as we might typically define it. We don't go to heaven, we don't start again. None of this is about despair or the dread looming over all of us. It should just be about the process. The exact steps to form motion that inches us closer towards value. You should just smile at the nonsense unfolding on a chaotic human-drenched screen because it's vital that apathy to it becomes a forgotten option. Perhaps that's why you're a dog. Something beautiful itself, sent to usher in what will still ultimately be an after for all who see it. Something aware of being alive, but not burdened by what that necessarily has to mean. An outlier who can spell that out to us. Because nobody left after the dog will continue to live hopelessly unaware. If this is done right, then no future good will be done just because we were asked nicely. Just because we happen to be man's best friend. As this dog, the game seemingly asks for us to strive for a goal that should only be achievable by a deity, but that has still fallen on us to take up the responsibility of all the same. The onus has been inherited. To be a guide to salvation doesn't just mean adding masses to your ranks. That is not imperative, but it may be a kindness. Humanity can and will carry on, but why not offer something to make that journey feel, if not worthwhile, then just a little bit more easy? Who wouldn't benefit from living with just an extra piece of light in their lives? Perhaps that's what real salvation is. Even if you were just led by the dog or suffered time and time again, you were for a moment amongst enough goodness to know what it maybe feels like to have been saved. The more that we gather, the more it affects change. To save as many people as possible is inherently good, but if we can't do that, then we can still show them moments, pieces, acts that may help us continue to learn how, or even remember to try and make them last. Only with each other can good things truly be said to have happened, because we were there together to have noticed it. At the end of the game, as I read it, at the end of those stretches of puzzles and battles, you have become the last individual. You will have made the people understand that we are connected, and new possibilities will present themselves for all those who are one with that knowledge. Trial and error. Everybody behind the scenes knew that a puzzle, the experience, is the only way that anyone manages to learn. I really do await this game's oncoming legacy, because no interpretation feels definitive, or like it's not scratching the surface of the right answer too. For once even in the current landscape, this is art that, rather selfishly, but also refreshingly, is about why it's a people, not just the world worth saving. I don't think this game can go down in history as one of the best to ever do what it's managed, but it will undoubtedly continue to be an interesting puzzle box for people to stumble upon, that no doubt they will have already heard whisperings about before. I really fear the objective of games like this, namely the pieces of my life that they will forever become when I'm done with them, the chunks of my brain that will forever stay somewhat devoted to that grind, to those questions. Games like this are time capsules of an era and feelings that are in limited supply. They don't honestly have to do that much to help us. The abstract absurdity of the imagery and everything happening around it will compel us to attribute meaning. The game really isn't aiming to say as much as I've managed to read from it, but I can't help but label it as a game for everyone when I consider how quickly my reading could be rendered obsolete. This is art that selfishly I want the whole world to see, because I would love nothing more than for someday my reading to be the least heard in any room. Humanity has an impossible puzzle to solve. How do we make togetherness the act that it was meant to be, rather than the act it has become? Whether the game necessarily answers that question is for you to discover, but even if they hadn't succeeded, then it wouldn't really matter to me. The mark that these creators have left will be measured in years. Namely, just how long will I think, yeah. For a time, that really was some of the most interesting art being made on the planet. Art for everybody.